I'm not going to make my diet goals this year, but no, I thought the food was pretty good. But there were some selections of people that brought. Linda Rich's little appetizer here with the mozzarella cheese and tomatoes. I mean, that is just something to die for. There was a lot of good stuff here. Thank you for bringing your desserts, and I really appreciate it. Made this kind of special. Julie's already said that we're going to do this as an annual event now. On a weekly basis, and so just prepare yourself for that. We have a special guest with us tonight. We have several special guests with us tonight, but
you mean special?
You gotta love Jeff. You can't kill him. You gotta love him. That's the only two choices you have. Dr. Phyllis Poland was just an amazing woman. I didn't meet her until the first time like 10 years ago. And my first impression with her, she immediately told me exactly what to do and how to do it and when to do it. And there was a time when she wanted me to do something and I didn't get it done. And in the time frame that she thought I should have gotten it done, so she called me up and really pretty much ripped me a new asshole. Now, I've been yelled at by general officers, I've been yelled at by elected officials, I've been yelled at by the Secretary of Defense. And those didn't seem to bother me nearly as much as being yelled at by Phyllis. And she was just a remarkable woman. She was extremely bright. She has a fantastic history, and I'm sure you all read about her a little bit. But I'm blessed by I'm married to a doctor. My daughter's a doctor, and I always enjoyed the times in which the three of them got together, and they could not stump Phyllis. She just read everything. She got her continuing education done. That had to be done every 3 years to keep your medical license. She'd get it done by June. My wife would be struggling in September. And it was just amazing. She had just a dazzling intellect. She was an artist. She was just so many things. She was just a Renaissance woman, way before her time. And imagining going down to being rejected by Johns Hopkins University several times. Because frankly she was a woman, and then being picked up by University of Maryland and being really the only woman that graduated in her class, and then coming out here and hanging the shingle, and she made house calls. I noticed she kept a pharmacy down in her first floor, and she was. I told her did she have Schedule II drugs, and she said yes. And I said, well, what did you do about that? And she said, well, Keats put a buzzer in the doctor's office, and you probably know this story. He put a buzzer so if she thought that she was in danger or something like that, she'd kind of stomp on the buzzer, and then her husband would be alerted and I guess come down and rescue her. But she was fearless. But one of the things that we did within the last couple of years is that she redid the roof. Very generous of her to do that. And she was telling the roofer all of the patch jobs that she had done with tar, climbing out on the third floor out off the dormers. And like we thought this had happened, 30, 40 years ago. No, it had happened like 10 or 15 years ago. And so she was just an amazing woman. Anyway, we have one of her sons here with us tonight, his wife. Keats carries the name of his, Keats A. Poland carries the name of his father, but he goes by the initials CAP or CAP, and he's been a machinist down at Goddard Space Flight Center, the same place where Bill Chambers and Julie Van Campen were, and they knew him down there. He's a precision machinist, and he's just a really good son. And he's been very supportive of what the Friends have tried to do, certainly in the last several years. And so I appreciate you coming here with your wife and to listen to our little talk. I'm going to give a brief introduction to Ranger Sade because almost everybody knows him. He's been our seasonal ranger here for the summer. He's done a fabulous job. I have the benefit of actually seeing some of the letters of our visitors that have come in and say, what a good job. He's been in uniform. He was a stand-up kind of guy. He would help people, answer questions, show them around. I remember one lady referred to her as a fine young man. Something that, frankly, I've never been referred to as. Anyway, Will's is a graduate student now at Goucher College in historical preservation, and he comes here tonight not wearing the emblem of a park ranger, but as a graduate student. And he's interested in our history. He's interested in history in general. And so he did this graduate school paper, which he's going to talk to you all about the Lee Pullen Mansion. Now, he's been at Gunpowder for actually 2 years. This is his second year. And he's been working with Rob Bailey. Now, Ranger Rob Bailey's here, too. He used to be working Gunpowder. Then he slid over to Elk Neck as the assistant park manager, and then he slid over to Susquehanna Rocks as the assistant park manager, and now he's the historian for the Maryland Park Service. So he's going to be running the place in no time at all. But Rob introduced a way Will to work at Moncton Station and try to redo the visitor center there, and or inventory the artifacts, and he's done a great job with there. So no good deed goes unpunished, and so he's been stolen by Susquehanna, the Rock State Park, and that's where he's working right now as their historian, trying to do their thing. So this is not so much a job for him, it's not so much a career. I think for Will it's really a calling. So please, would you just give him a warm welcome and help him.
So hello. So Rick already sort of mentioned I'm doing this, been researching the Lee Pullen House for the past couple months for my graduate program on taking a class for historic property documentation. And so I've been able to main point of this whole project was to document the Pullen House. So I was trying to see to document the house for the National Register of Historic Places according to the National Park Service standards, and determine if the house is worthy of preservation. So the house is on it's in the Jerusalem Mill Historic District, and I believe it's also in the was put in for Gunpowder Falls State Park. Maybe. I believe it's on Gunpowder Falls State Park Historic District as well. And so following the report, following the National Park Service Preservation Act of 1966 guidelines that were put in place to document the house. So most of us know about the house. It's right. So if you just look straight out, it's right out there. It's the big white house on the end of the curve of the road. So the Lee Pullen Mansion is an important structure in American history. It was the residence of the mill owner of a pretty prosperous milling business here. It's now part of the well-preserved Jerusalem Mill Village. That's part of Gunpowder Falls State Park. It was the residential, commercial, and cultural center for a multi-century Quaker village that was here. The Lee family came here in the 1770s and from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, set up shop here and eventually built the house. I've seen some questioning between the original part of the house was built between 1772 or 1800. So it's been part of my whole challenge has been to really find what the accurate date is, because there's been multiple histories on this house so far. So I guess more background with what's going on in the region. So starting in the mid 18th century, Quaker industrialists, a lot of them came down from the north of Philadelphia. The Lees, neighboring a Jericho mill was the Tyson's family, who eventually moved and settled Woodbury and Baltimore City. The Ellicotts, who went on to form Ellicott City, they all came down into this region around the same time period. And they all settled in the Little Gunpowder River Valley and Patapsco River Valleys. And it all became part of the whole mill revolution that took place. And the Little Gunpowder River Valley became really important at this time period because Joppa was right up the road, and that was one of the major port cities, such as eventually Joppatown or Joppa became less prominent. A lot of business moved to Baltimore, and that's why a lot of the mills started to falter around this region. And so the main figure that moved to the house was David Lee, came from Pennsylvania, and he was basically apprentice, learned on grist mill operation, and purchased this mill from Isaiah Linton, who Linton was in some ways a developer of mills and would build multiple mills in this region. And he bought basically got Lee's Merchant Mill here, which this fine building is a really rare example of this kind of structure. It's got the interior water wheels for year-round use, and it was a really state-of-the-art operation in its day. And in that way, he also built there was a whole entire agricultural village setting built up with the blacksmith shop here, a sawmill. You have a cooper, woodwright, and plenty of farm fields around for creating the grain and wheat and everything that was milled in the building. So that was the original constructor of the mill, or the house. And it passed down through several generations. And passed on to like later Lees, like Percy Lee, who would have been involved with the bank barn. And eventually the house passed on to the Hazards for a short while, and from there that was passed on. In 1954, the Pullens purchased the house, and from that point onward, it was under that family's ownership. So it wasn't too many owners from the original family. So to do my work for this house, it was a bit of a challenge. There was like a few histories done on the house, but they were short, and most of them had conflicting information, so dates didn't line up, and just try to find which parts of the house were the original one. I did several walkthroughs of the house and was able to really see where, like how the house was designed and added on. Like specifically, if you go in the basement, there's some really questionable. Just trying to figure out where things are, because there's actually a spring house, or an early spring house, I believe, that's in the basement. It's large curved stone and has a wood floor, and that would have possibly been from an earlier version of the house before it was added on. So like other sources of research, I ended up visiting the Quaker Meeting House up in Fallston, and was able to look through, and that's where the Lees and many of the other families were members of the meeting house there. And David Lee and others are actually buried out back. You can visit their gravesite. I visited some of the other our neighbors, such as Scott McBride, who owns the Jericho Mill house. I was able to visit there and see what other similarities with property-wise, since that was another house that was owned by a mill owner. And just traveling, just contacting other historical societies, looking at research done at, say, the Baltimore County Historical Society in Cockeysville. They had a good amount of, they have a lot of mill histories, but the problem is this is, Jerusalem was, part of its history was in Baltimore County, and then this is now Harford County, so it's sort of hard to find a lot of info on it sometimes. So like initially with this property, I was trying to see if there was any connection with the Underground Railway in the region and with the freeing of enslaved peoples. And there's very little from what I have found so far. It's certainly much more research needed on that front, but I was just trying to see if there was any connection, since the Quakers were very involved with the whole movement, to see if there was any, because there's some undocumented, unverified sources with some of our neighboring properties, such as Jericho, the house in Jericho, that there's possibly, like, say, a tunnel that goes to Jubilee. But it's unverified, but I'm just trying to, that's certainly a spot for future research. And lastly, just the overviews, just the pull-in ownership of the house was they were able to preserve the house for many years, and through their ownership we're able to, the house is it was not changed much, and that's a good thing, since we could see a lot of the original fixtures of the house and the structure of it. The integrity has not been changed much at all. And so I guess I'll open the floor up to questions if have any more.
I've heard the story that David Lee built the original house and then there was a fire.
Oh yes, there was a.
Is there evidence of the fire and then the additional structure beyond that? Again, that I think the building we see now may very well be, and maybe Cap knows this, but that really is Civil War era, maybe.
I don't know any evidence of any fire. I've never seen anything.
No, never saw any evidence in the basement or any of the structure.
But I've seen dates from like 1840. There's another from like 1850. So it's not I can't find a source that gives me a definite answer when a fire may have occurred in the house. But
Well, the Quakers, as they prospered, and I mean, this building is a perfect example. You know, the tax record shows a small blacksmith shop, and I love showing the school kids the small black shop, the blacksmith shop, the roof line over here. And as they prospered, they added on, or did additional buildings. And, I was just wondering if, at some point in time, it'd be interesting to find out if, in fact, where those additions were made.
yeah, if you can go around the house too, you can see. I know that the wood section on the back was added on later, as the rear porch on it, and it's interesting if you look around the building too, because the stucco even changed. Initially, it looks like the stucco would have had like lines in it to make it look like a blockwork, and must have been changed later on. And the rest of the house is just a smooth stucco, and you can see those inside like the porch areas. There's the glass like sun porch area, and then the other area that's like goes into the kitchen. So there's like, you can definitely see where there's been additions onto the house. And
Cap, the back porch, what we think of as the back, that was there, I guess, when we were kids, wasn't it? The back porch between the house and the smokehouse. That was there at weekends. So when you come up to her gate to go into the house, you have the smokehouse, and then I think most of her patients came up to the porch and went in. When we were kids, the back porch was there then, wasn't it?
All back porch, just,
I mean, it's all closed in with glass.
closed in park for you, almost.
Yeah.
When we were there, Dad put the windows in because of, that was open screen.
Oh, okay.
He put the windows in for insulation purposes, and the porch posts were rotten. And the porch and the whole corner of the house was dropping, so he jacked it back up and replaced the post in
Okay.
the corner of the house back there.
But that was
Just
an
a little
open
bit.
screen porch, and then he put the glass in there. Yeah, question? Oh, Chris?
Speaking of porches, apparently as built, the main entrance was actually on this end, which is kind of uncommon typically, structure, front porch, front entrance facing the road.
yeah,
In this case, it's not an accident, it was looking at the mill, I think they were,
yeah. If you look straight out from that front there, you can look. It just looks right at the mill, and it seems to everything.
right.
And I was looking tonight, and the road actually through the curve, it actually goes. Looks like the road. You look straight at the house, like it was designed to be almost be impressive to a point. And yeah.
What brought you to even think of Underground Railroad as far as, was there any slave history here or in the immediate area? Or?
There definitely would have been because right up the road on Singer Road is the McComas School, and that was one of. Rick, is that like one of the first in the area?
Yeah,
Or
it's probably one of the first, yeah.
schools for freed blacks that would have taken place after.
Did you ever find
Yes,
anything,
yes, patient.
evidence of that? Or?
Nothing that's like truly verified yet.
Right.
I've gotten some oral histories on it, but it's because I'd studied some of this on the eastern shore of Maryland,
Yeah.
and there's plenty of
Yeah.
research has been done, but I haven't really found
Out
as
here,
much.
you know,
Yeah.
In your paper, did you say there might have been a tunnel from the Jubilee House down to,
Mhm.
was that your writing?
Yeah.
Okay, I heard that somewhere else.
Yeah. Scott McBride and Jana. It apparently was. I think she was digging, and it actually her like shovel fell down into a like a cavernous type of tunnel in her yard. So there's something that goes over there.
Yeah, she was putting the plant in, and it swallowed the shovel, the plant, and almost her. And so she has now built, if you look on Jericho Road, she built that little wooden structure. Because she didn't want to necessarily hide it, but she didn't want anybody stepping in it.
Speaking of the Underground Railroad, he's now deceased, but there was a African-American gentleman who was raised in this area, and he had oral tradition that yes, indeed, this was the Underground Railroad.
Okay.
He's now deceased, but it's classic. He never told me when he was coming. I mean, he would have a busload of people, say from South Carolina or something. I'd be in the museum and I'd hear a bus pull up and hear these people parade out. That again, I just stepped back and let Matthew tell the story, because again, and not by accident, by design, there was no historic record, maintained of the Underground Railroad. You didn't want to be associated with it. So he would tell them stories, that may well have been true, but again, it wasn't documented.
Yeah.
Wasn't Harriet Tubman, out over on the Eastern Shore? Maybe there's some documentation of that within,
Yeah, I know she went up through Wilmington area,
yeah.
headed north. But
Maybe spread out here, I don't know.
Will's being a little modest here, so I'm going to help him out. He graduated from Washington College in historic preservation, and the assistant park manager also is a graduate of Washington College, Angie Crenshaw, Ranger Angie Crenshaw, who used to actually work here at Gunpowder. So Will and Angie are in cahoots, and they share information back and forth. So, sorry, Angie couldn't be here today to support you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Well, thank you.
She did fine. Okay,